Hey guys, tonight we drift together into the quiet folds of the past, where the wide Mississippi Valley once cradled ancient earthworks and silent stories of people long gone. Imagine the evening air cooling around you, the soft buzz of crickets, and a sky slowly deepening into a velvet blue. Each mound of earth rises like a soft pillow across the land, a patient witness to centuries. You might think living thousands of years ago would be hard, honestly. You probably would not last a day without Wi-Fi. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like sharing, write in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the Mississippi Valley as if entering a dream. The ground beneath your feet feels broad and steady, shaped not only by rivers, but by countless generations. The wind whispers through tall grasses, low and continuous, like a library of murmurs that never ends. Each rustle seems to say, there is time here enough for patience, enough for remembering. The valley unfolds in your mind, wide and gentle. Soft ridges mark where water once pressed the soil, while lines of trees edge the horizon, standing tall yet unhurried. Their branches trace delicate patterns against the dimming sky. You sense the breath of history rising and falling with the land's gentle swells. Scattered across this landscape, mounds rise quietly smooth, round, calm, as if the earth itself laid a blanket over memory. Long before towns, highways, or mapped names, this valley was alive. People moved here with purpose, carrying baskets, tools, and stories. They followed the river, strong and winding, recognizing its promise as a place for life to take root. Stepping carefully onto its banks, they noted the richness of the soil. They tilled not only for crops, but for meaning, raising mounds taller than a person's shoulders, sometimes higher than houses, leaving enduring traces of care and memory etched into the land. The Mississippi itself is never in a hurry. It bends, it loops, it drifts like a long thought stretched over centuries. The river has always been the patient narrator of this region, carrying logs, fish, and fragments of the past. Stand close enough and you can hear it hum, like the turning of pages too vast to read at once. Sometimes the current shifts and channels are lost or born again, erasing footprints or tucking secrets beneath sand. You imagine the air of those ancient evenings. Fires glowed in villages by the water's edge. Children played with small pebbles, while the elders spoke in tones that rose and fell like distant chants. Each sound merged with the steady background music of crickets. Smoke curled upward into skies lit by countless stars. You picture the stars so bright, you could almost pluck one down and warm your hands on its glow. Archaeologists tell us that people here carried their lives in harmony with the seasons. They planted when the rains softened the earth. They gathered when the corn stood tall, its stalks rustling like soft applause. They built mounds as if composing with soil, lifting basket after basket, until a hill took shape where there had been none before. No machines, no shortcuts, only patience stretched across lifetimes. One historical truth stands clear. Some of the earliest earthworks date back thousands of years, long before the cities of Europe rose in stone. The Adena and later the Hopewell traditions left behind these shapes, sometimes conical, sometimes circular, always mysterious. Scholars describe them as ceremonial, perhaps burial grounds, perhaps observatories aligned with the sky. You find yourself wondering, how could simple earth carry such enduring purpose? A quieter mystery lingers. The mounds are precise yet humble, grand yet soft. They do not shout or rise like towers of arrogance. Low and calm, almost shy, they invite reflection. Why did the builders choose such forms? Perhaps they saw the earth as a companion, whispering to the soil to rise slowly, to shelter ancestors in silence. At dusk, You walk through the field. Grass cool beneath your feet, fireflies blink like tiny lanterns. Each mound feels like an island of stillness. You pause at one, tracing its gentle curve with your hand. The soil feels warm, as if remembering the touch of generations. History is not locked away. It breathes beneath your palm. A faint rustle reveals a rabbit, ears tall, then gone. Life continues here, as it always has. The mounds hold the silence of the dead and the heartbeat of the living. You imagine the builders watching the same river, the same sun dipping behind familiar ridges. They leaned on wooden staffs, teaching children where spirits dwell. Perhaps they laughed at fishing mishaps or stubborn corn in dry soil, their humor softening the weight of survival. Even in absence, their presence lingers, quiet yet vivid, linking past and present through the enduring land. Centuries passed, yet the mounds remained. Floods swept through, forests shifted, storms roared, but the shapes endured, softened at the edges, steady as a lullaby. Tonight, standing in the Mississippi Valley, you sense the land as a cradle. It holds the memory of people long gone, whose quiet labor still shapes the earth beneath your feet. You exhale slowly, and the night exhales with you, reminding you that time is vast, yet moments of calm are always present. Cool air drifts through the tall reeds, carrying a sound like turning pages, as if history continues to be written here. There is no rush. The valley asks only that you walk slowly, that you listen, that you remember life can be lived without hurry. A star slips silently across the horizon. You smile, imagining that those who lived here may have whispered similar wishes, to sleep peacefully, to live simply, to trust that the earth, in its quiet generosity, will hold them. And so the Mississippi Valley whispers on, soft and enduring, guiding you gently into the vast, unspoken story of those who came before, their presence folded into every rise and curve of the land. You let your thoughts drift toward the great river, the Mississippi, whose waters have curled and coiled across the land for thousands of years. It does not rush. It does not clamor for attention. It simply moves, steady and deliberate, like a long inhale and exhale of the earth itself. Each bend in its path feels like a pause in a story, as if the river, too, likes to linger over its sentences. The river has always been more than water. It was once a road, a map, a marketplace. Long before asphalt or steel bridges arched into the sky, people tied their lives to its current. Canoes carved from tree trunks slid silently from the banks, carrying families, baskets of food, carved ornaments, and flint tools. The river moved steadily, a living highway linking one settlement to the next, its flow as essential to life as the air itself. A clear historical fact illuminates this world. Communities along the river traded not only goods, but also ideas. From the Ohio Valley to the Gulf of Mexico, objects traveled astonishing distances. Shell beads from the coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from distant mountains passed through hands connected by the same water. Each item carried a story of human connection, of people reaching across distances, forming bonds without wheels, contracts, or writing. Yet the river held its own mysteries. Over centuries, it changed course, carving new channels and burying old shores beneath layers of mud. Villages vanished from the record, their locations lost to shifting waters. Archaeologists now find traces of settlements far from the present banks, evidence of communities whose lives were once intimately tied to channels that no longer exist. You imagine waking in one such village to see the familiar river drifting quietly away, a friend slipping into the distance. The sound of the river settles in your mind, water lapping gently against a shore, patient and unhurried. At night, the Mississippi may have gleamed under moonlight, its surface smooth as silk, reflecting stars until the line between sky and water blurred. Paddling silently or dipping without splash, you are carried into a horizon that seems endless. Villagers knew the river as part of themselves, reading its moods, the floods of spring, the summer retreat, the icy winter edges. Navigation was muscle memory, a body learning to trust the river's guidance, as natural as breathing. One odd fact survives in stories told by geologists. In some places, the Mississippi shifted so suddenly that entire stretches of old channels disappeared under new land, leaving behind oxbow lakes shaped like giant teardrops. These crescent lakes are still visible today, scattered across the valley like forgotten footprints. They remind us that the river is both reliable and restless, always moving yet always present. Imagine walking beside an oxbow lake at twilight. The water lies still, encircled by reeds, and the heron rises slowly, wings wide and unhurried. The scene feels quiet, yet alive a calm that must have embraced the people who built villages here, offering moments of peace between planting, hunting, and trading. The Mississippi's tributaries were just as vital as the main river. The Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois carried people, goods, and stories into the valley's heart. Each smaller river added its own voice, merging into the larger song of the Mississippi. At a confluence, currents swirled together, one brown with silt, another green with algae blending into a new shade, a living metaphor for community, where difference flowed into unity, and life moved steadily with the water's patient rhythm. Even now, tracing these waterways on a modern map reveals veins stretching across the continent. They seem fragile on paper, yet they carried the weight of civilizations. You smile, thinking of your own tiny veins, hidden beneath skin, yet sustaining your entire body. In the same way, the Mississippi's network carried the story of an ancient world, quietly and reliably. Historians note that these rivers allowed cultures to thrive far beyond isolated villages. Farming methods, ceremonial practices, and building techniques moved by canoe. A tool crafted in one region could travel hundreds of miles, not by armies, but by families gliding downstream. This patient diffusion shaped the mound-building cultures whose monuments still rise today, connecting people, ideas, and land across vast distances. But the river also erased. Floods swallowed homes, leaving only fragments behind. Silt buried pottery, stone, and bone until centuries later when modern hands uncovered them. The river both preserved and concealed, a paradox that feels almost intentional, as if it wanted to keep some secrets for itself. Walking through this vision, you notice how the atmosphere slows you down. The air carries a faint coolness, perhaps the same coolness ancient people felt as they leaned over the side of a canoe, trailing fingers in the water. A ripple spreads, wide and delicate, then fades as if it never happened. In one gentle moment, you see the river not as an obstacle, but as a companion. It is neither enemy nor servant, neither to be conquered nor worshipped blindly. It is simply there, offering its surface as a mirror, offering its current as a guide. You can almost laugh at how simple it seems compared to modern traffic, where horns blare and lanes crowd. Here the only rush is the current itself, and it hurries no one. The Mississippi Valley feels timeless because the river ties each century together. Ancient paddlers, European explorers, modern barges all pass along the same course. The voices change, the vessels shift, but the water remains. Imagine how many songs have echoed across these waters, from chants to flutes to fiddles to radios. Each one drifts downstream, carried into distance, never quite gone. You find yourself sitting on the bank now, in your mind's quiet theater. The grass is cooled beneath you. Frogs croak nearby. The stars begin their patient climb. You feel the immense calm of knowing that the same river you imagine tonight once carried the laughter, the burdens, and the hopes of people long forgotten. The river is more than silent witness. It is the stage upon which history glided, a ribbon of memory weaving through earth and time. You close your eyes and let its rhythm lull you deeper, as if each gentle lap against the shore is a whisper telling you to rest. You drift deeper into the valley, where the soft weight of time settles gently on your shoulders. The forests thicken around you, alive with the whisper of leaves, the steady rhythm of crickets, and the faint scent of smoke curling from imagined fires. Autumn fills the air, rich with the aroma of fallen leaves and damp soil, a season when the land itself seems ready to be shaped by human hands. Here you encounter the first mound builders, part of the archaic and woodland traditions. These early communities began to see the land not merely as a place to live, but as a canvas upon which memory could be carved. Long before Cahokia's sprawling plazas or the intricate Hopewell earthworks, small groups quietly shaped meaning into the soil. They left no stone temples, no grand palaces, only mounds, simple yet profound markers of human presence, carrying intention and remembrance across generations. One clear historical fact tells us that the Adena culture, living in the Ohio Valley around 1000 BCE, constructed burial mounds in conical shapes. Some were modest, barely taller than a person. Others rose high enough to be seen from across the forest. Archaeologists have found carefully placed bodies inside these mounds, sometimes accompanied by carved pipes, ornaments, or tools. Each mound was more than a grave. It was a story, a deliberate act of shaping earth into permanence. The true meaning of these mounds remains a mystery. Were they built to honor leaders, connect with the spirit world, or mark sacred spaces? Scholars have debated for generations, yet the soil offers no clear answer. You imagine a mother standing at the foot of a newly raised mound, her hand resting gently on the earth, whispering words that will never be recorded. Life in these early communities moved slowly and deliberately. Villages clustered near rivers, homes framed with wood and covered in bark or woven mats. Fires burned low, sending thin trails of smoke into the trees. People gathered food from forests, fished in rivers, and tended small gardens of squash and sunflowers. Evenings were quiet, filled with reflection and storytelling as the day faded into night. The construction of a mound unfolded slowly, over months or even across seasons. Neighbors came together, carrying basket after basket of earth, depositing soil with careful intention. Each load was more than weight. It held memory, purpose, and the quiet determination of a community committed to leaving a mark on the land. Day by day, the mound grew, curving upward where once the ground had been flat. Grass eventually spread over its surface, softening the shape until it seemed as if it had always been part of the landscape. Some Adana mounds were built in stages, with new layers added over generations. A modest mound might grow as additional burials were placed, each layer preserving another life, another story. In this way, the earth itself became a living archive, a tangible record of community memory. Standing before such a mound, the living could feel the past rise gently beneath their feet, a bridge between life, memory, and land. You walk through this imagined forest slowly, the crisp air carrying the faint sweetness of wood smoke. Leaves crunch softly underfoot, and in the distance, a small mound shimmers silver in the twilight. It is unassuming, yet it draws the eye. You pause, sensing the quiet gravity of those who once stood here, who raised earth toward the sky with care and devotion. The Adena were not alone in shaping the land. Other woodland cultures followed, carrying the tradition of mound building across river valleys. Even with simple tools, stones, wood, baskets, they raised monuments that have endured for centuries. While many modern buildings crumble within decades, these green, steady mounds remain, humming quietly like a long, gentle song. Archaeologists note that the placement of these early mounds was often deliberate, aligned with natural features such as river terraces or ridges. Perhaps they sought sweeping views of the horizon, or perhaps the mounds served as markers, guiding travelers through the forests. Their full meaning remains hidden, tucked beneath layers of soil and centuries of silence. Yet, as you linger in this imagined landscape, You sense that permanence was not the builder's aim. A mound was not erected to impress distant strangers, but to anchor a moment, a life, a memory in the land they knew. They built for themselves and for those they loved, unaware that people in the 21st century might walk here with curious minds. The forest deepens in color as evening falls. The air carries the crisp clarity of autumn, sharpening the stars as they emerge. A fire crackles faintly, its flickering light like a heartbeat. From these mounds, the Adena once watched the night sky, stars glittering above, while the earth beneath held the remains of ancestors. Here, heaven and earth meet, underfoot and overhead, woven into every breath. Another mystery lingers in the shapes of these early mounds. Some rise in perfect circles, others stretch into gentle ovals, and some take irregular forms. Were these decisions symbolic, reflecting beliefs and stories, or simply practical choices? The truth remains hidden. You imagine the builders stepping back, eyes tracing curves of soil, smoothing edges, adjusting lines, much like an artist shaping clay. Every gesture is deliberate, yet the full meaning remains beyond reach. You settle into the rhythm of this scene. Baskets lifted, soil poured, voices murmuring softly. The work is communal, steady, patient. There is no hurry. The mound grows slowly, almost imperceptibly, as if the earth itself is breathing. It reminds you of bread rising in an oven unseen, until suddenly it is there, warm and whole. The thought humanizes the labor, lending gentleness to the immense effort. The Adena, the woodland, and all early mound builders teach us that history often begins with small, faithful acts. A basket of earth may seem insignificant, yet repeated thousands of times. It creates monuments that endure long after empires fade. You let this thought drift like a falling leaf, light and slow. The mound stands quietly, grass swaying atop its rounded form. Insects hum softly around the forest. Night deepens, and the weight of history settles not as a burden, but as a warm, steady blanket. The first mound builders have vanished, yet their earth still rises, still speaks, still whispers in the valley's quiet. You continue drifting along the quiet valley, where the air feels heavy with a timeless calm. The trees arch overhead, their branches forming a gentle dome that seems to echo the very shapes the ancient people once carved into the land. As you walk, the forest clears, and before you lies an open field where patterns of earth rise subtly against the horizon. They are not accidental ridges. They are circles, squares, and lines measured with an attention that whispers of purpose. Here, you enter the world of the Hopewell tradition. Flourishing between 200 BCE and 500 CE, they shaped the land with remarkable care, leaving behind earthworks that are far more than simple piles of soil. These were vast geometric formed circles hundreds of feet across, squares nearly perfect in symmetry, and long avenues stretching gently across the landscape. Each formation was crafted with patience and precision, as if the builders were in quiet conversation with the world around them. Walking among these structures in your imagination, you feel a subtle hum of order beneath your feet, a rhythm that invites slow, mindful steps. One historical fact stands out. Many Hopewell earthworks align closely with the cardinal directions. Squares face north, south, east, and west with astonishing accuracy, suggesting that the builders understood orientation and considered their monuments as part of a larger cosmic design. They were linking earth to sky, village to horizon, the tangible to the celestial. And yet, the exact purpose of these forms remains a gentle mystery. Were they ceremonial centers where rituals unfolded beneath the stars? Were they calendars, tracking the sun and moon across the seasons? Perhaps they were both, blending practical observation with spiritual meaning. No one can know for certain. You picture yourself walking along a great circle. The earth rises softly beneath your feet, grass brushing lightly against ankles. The shape curves endlessly, mirroring the cycles of the sky. It feels intimate, like a quiet stroll through a park, where every step is deliberate, slow, and filled with calm reflection. A subtle and fascinating fact about the Hopewell sites is that some combine multiple geometric forms, linking a circle to a square, through a long, gentle avenue of earth. The full design can only truly be appreciated from above, as though the builders imagined someone or something watching from the heavens. It invites a sense of quiet wonder, as you follow the invisible lines with your own steps, letting your mind drift across the broad shapes. Perhaps they sought to mirror the rhythms of the universe on the land, creating a dialogue between earth and sky. The atmosphere of these works is one of deep patience. You imagine workers moving slowly, baskets of soil balanced carefully, following long, precise lines. Each placement is deliberate. Each handful of earth adds to a pattern that emerges gradually, like a painting revealed stroke by stroke. The sounds are soft, earth settling, grass bending, distant murmurs of conversation. There is no rush, only a meditative rhythm, as if the act of building itself is a quiet devotion. Throughout human history, circles and squares have been symbols of connection to the cosmos, from stone circles in Europe to pyramids in Mesoamerica. The Hopewell, across oceans and centuries, express the same idea in their own language, shaping the soil beneath their feet into forms that speak to eternity, a reminder of human creativity aligned with nature and the stars. As twilight drifts softly across your mind, the earthworks seem to glow with a gentle light, their contours catching the last warmth of the sun. The horizon shifts from gold to soft, dusky hues, and you find yourself standing in the center of a great circle, embraced by quiet symmetry. Round shapes curve around you, straight lines anchor you, and the open sky above mirrors the balance beneath your feet. The world beyond this place slips away, leaving only the rhythm of form, slow and steady, as if the land itself is breathing with you. Archaeologists have discovered artifacts here: pipes carved in delicate effigy, copper ornaments, and finely crafted pottery shards. These objects suggest that the earthworks were more than practical markers. They were stages for ritual and reflection, spaces where communities gathered to honor ancestors, celebrate the living, and connect with forces beyond themselves. You can almost hear the distant, calm echo of drums, rising and falling like gentle waves across the evening air. The sheer scale of these complexes deepens the wonder. Some Hopewell designs stretch for miles, their full forms impossible to grasp from the ground. How did they organize such work without written plans, metal tools, or beasts of burden? Yet the answer is written in the soil itself. They did it. The lines remain, silent but eloquent, carrying their meaning even when it cannot be fully translated. As night deepens, stars begin to pierce the darkened sky, soft points of light scattered across the horizon. You imagine the Hopewell standing in the same fields, watching constellations rise and fall, their circles and squares mirroring the heavens. Here, earth and sky meet in quiet harmony, geometry linking human life with the rhythm of the cosmos. The silence is complete yet full, a gentle presence whispering without words. You walk slowly among the earthworks, feeling the shapes beneath your feet. The ground is firm, the air cool, the moment unhurried. Each step reminds you that these circles and squares were meant to be experienced deliberately, perhaps in processions moving at a measured pace. You imagine the builders feeling the same calm, their minds settling into rhythm as they carried basket after basket, eyes tracing lines toward the horizon. In the end, the Hopewell earthworks offer more questions than answers, and perhaps that is their gift. Not clarity, but wonder. You step back, letting the forms blur in the twilight, realizing that sometimes a circle simply reminds you that life moves in cycles. A square grounds you, and the deepest meaning often lies in the quiet mystery itself. The night deepens. The air cools. The earth beneath you hums with the geometry of lives long past. Circles and squares dissolve into shadow, but their presence remains like a faint echo of order within the quiet chaos of time. You breathe slowly, letting the symmetry guide you toward stillness. You wander deeper into the story, and the forest gathers around you like a gentle embrace. The trunks rise tall and steady, their bark rough beneath your fingertips, while leaves shift softly overhead in rhythms as old as the land itself. A faint trail opens before you, winding between roots and stones, as though guiding you toward places unseen. This trail feels ancient, and in a way, it is. Long before paved roads and highways, there were paths like this pathways that connected villages, mounds, and rivers at great distances. In the age of the mound builders, these forest paths were quiet lifelines, winding through hills, meadows, and shaded groves, linking distant communities in subtle, almost invisible ways. People walked slowly, carrying baskets, tools, gifts, and stories, their steps blending with the soft rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, and the gentle hum of insects. Laughter and murmured conversations moved along the trails, calm and unhurried, as if the forest itself kept rhythm with their passage. A striking historical fact reminds us of their reach. The Hopewell culture, active from around 100 BCE to 500 CE, created an extensive exchange network. Obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, mica from the Appalachians, and seashells from the Gulf of Mexico traveled along these trails. The goods moved patiently, step by step, alongside ideas and beliefs. The pathways were as vital as the treasures themselves, shaping a web of human connection that quietly endured across centuries. The forest paths were not simple dirt tracks. Many were carefully maintained, kept clear through regular use and quiet care. Some even stretched in long, nearly straight lines that defy the expectation of winding natural routes. Imagine the skill it took to plan and keep such alignments, as though people walked with invisible compasses guiding them across the land. Even now, in places where trees have grown back and roads have changed, faint ridges hint at where those paths once ran. The mystery lies in how such vast networks were maintained. Communities separated by hundreds of miles stayed connected without maps, wheels, or central governments. Some historians suggest bonds of kinship, alliances sealed by ritual gatherings, created ties strong enough to hold the roots together. Others imagine seasonal migrations, where families journeyed to distant earthworks for ceremonies, returning home with goods, stories, and friendships. Though the details are lost, the outcome is clear. These paths formed a living web across the ancient East, uniting far-flung peoples in shared purpose. Imagine yourself walking one of these forest trails. The world narrows to soft earth beneath your steps, the call of a bird, and the cool scent of damp leaves. The path bends gently around hills, crosses streams, and continues without haste. Ahead you picture figures carrying baskets, their voices hushed as if honoring the quiet. Walking here feels like moving with time itself, each step both fleeting and eternal. There is comfort in knowing every culture has walked paths. The Hopewell traveled by foot, carrying what mattered most, their journeys mirroring our own. Even now, a quiet walk offers the same rhythm of breath, the same awareness of trees, the same calm of forward motion. You smile faintly, imagining how impressive their step counts would be long before fitness trackers existed. Evidence shows some trails were broad enough for processions. Picture groups walking together toward ceremonial centers, bearing copper, shells, or carved stone. The journey itself was part of the ritual, the forest canopy breaking the sunlight into shifting mosaics, like stained glass woven from leaves. Here, movement and meaning became one. A lesser-known fact is that certain Hopewell pathways seem to link directly to earthworks, shaped with geometric precision, almost as if the roads were extensions of sacred design. This suggests that travel was not only practical, but also symbolic. To walk the path may have been to participate in a story larger than oneself, to join a movement echoing the cycles of the sky. The thought lingers, slow and gentle, like the crunch of leaves underfoot. A forest itself must have been both ally and challenge. Trails offered direction, but the woods could be dense, filled with brambles, fallen logs, and the occasional stream to cross. Yet, the builders managed not only to create paths, but to maintain them for centuries. Imagine the persistence this required, a constant tending that kept roots clear generation after generation. Such care speaks of continuity, of communities thinking far ahead, of a trust that future travelers would walk where they walked. As twilight deepens in your mind, you picture fireflies beginning to glow along the path. Their lights dot the edges like soft lanterns, leading the way through the growing darkness. The trail feels endless, but not in a tiring way. Instead, it feels eternal, as though you could walk forever and always be gently guided forward. Each curve invites you deeper into stillness, into a rhythm that feels both ancient and immediate. Historians still debate how formal these trade and travel networks truly were. Some argue they were deliberate systems with specific routes, while others believe they grew naturally from repeated journeys, step after step, creating paths over time. Either way, the result is the same. The land itself remembers the footsteps. Even now, under grass and trees, traces of those journeys remain like faint scars in the soil, quiet but enduring. You let your thoughts drift to the people who walked here centuries ago. They carried baskets, tools, dreams, and laughter. They followed trails that guided them not just to other villages, but to ceremonies, alliances, and new beginnings. Every step was part of a much larger picture, a tapestry woven from movement. You imagine them pausing to rest, sharing food by a stream, telling stories that turned the path itself into memory. The night grows darker, but the path glows softly in your mind. You follow it with no urgency, just the calm awareness that every journey is made of steps, and every step is its own quiet act of connection. The forest hums around you, and the trail stretches on, an unbroken thread tying past and present together. You breathe slowly, letting the rhythm of the pathway settle into you. Each step feels lighter. Each breath feels deeper. The forest cradles you in its stillness, and the path, ancient and enduring, carries you forward, softly, endlessly, into the night. The forest path slowly opens, and the trees thin into a wide clearing where the ground rises in gentle shapes. You pause, noticing how the earth itself seems sculpted into circles, squares, and long ridges. These earthworks are not random. They were made with intention, with patience, and with a sense of purpose that still hums softly in the soil. Tonight, we linger among them not to solve their mysteries, but to let their quiet presence wash over us like candlelight in the dark. In the clearing, you picture a gathering from long ago. Fires flicker low, casting warm light on faces both solemn and calm. The scent of sage or sweetgrass drifts through the air. People stand in quiet lines, some holding small bundles wrapped in cloth. Each step toward the mound feels deliberate, as though every motion carries a prayer. The ceremony begins not with spectacle, but with stillness, and you sense yourself breathing slower, drawn into their rhythm. Archaeological discoveries offer faint echoes of such moments. Within mounds, researchers have uncovered copper ornaments, obsidian blades, mica cut into luminous shapes, and seashells carried from distant shores. These were not tools of daily life, but sacred offerings. Their careful placement speaks of reverence gifts for the dead or tributes to unseen powers, marking ceremonies where the community gathered in profound connection. And yet, much remains unknown. The exact words spoken, the songs sung, the gestures performed, all are lost to time. We know only fragments, the arrangement of artifacts, the orientation of structures, the traces of fires once burning. The silence of history leaves space for imagination. Perhaps they chanted beneath the stars. Perhaps they stood quietly, listening to the wind. The mystery itself becomes part of the ceremony, an invitation for you to feel rather than to know. The atmosphere in your mind grows hushed, as if you are standing in the middle of one of those ancient nights. Shadows dance across the ground, the only sound the crackle of firewood and the soft rustle of fabric in the breeze. A line of people moves in slow procession, placing objects into the earth, each gesture deliberate and tender. The earth accepts everything without judgment, holding treasures and bones alike in its endless patience. One historical detail stands clear. During the Hopewell era, burials often involved more than simple interment. Elaborate rituals were performed, and multiple individuals were sometimes placed within large mound complexes. The scale suggests not just family remembrance, but ceremonies that involved entire communities. It was not merely about death, but about connection between the living, the departed, and the world beyond. The mystery deepens when we consider the reasons behind such care. Why expend so much effort to create these monumental works for rituals? Was it to guide the spirits, to honor ancestors, or to align with the heavens above? Archaeologists debate, but answers remain elusive. You feel a gentle smile forming. Perhaps the not knowing is the gift. The ceremony continues in silence, its meaning shifting and flowing like smoke from a slow-burning fire. Imagine the glow of dozens of small flames scattered across the earthwork. Each light flickers softly, creating patterns that look almost like constellations on the ground. The people gathered must have felt the same awe you feel when gazing at stars. The fire and the sky mirror each other, one above and one below, both endless in their quiet beauty. There is something deeply calming about picturing these scenes. No speeches rise, no arguments flare, only soft movements, slow breaths, and gestures repeated with reverence. The ritual is less about action than about presence, reminding you that stillness itself can be sacred. It makes you wonder if the builders understood rest as much as labor, silence as much as song. A little humor slips in. You realize they probably had no idea their ceremonies would someday lull someone into sleep centuries later. Among the most intriguing discoveries are the exotic materials buried here. Imagine a piece of copper that glimmers faintly in the firelight, its surface smoothed by countless hands. Or mica sheets so thin they shimmer like glass, cut into shapes that reflect both artistry and devotion. These objects came from distant lands, brought through long journeys. To place them in the earth was to give up something valuable, a gesture of generosity that speaks across time. The ceremonies were not only about the objects, though. They were about transformation. Fire turned wood into ash. Earth turned offerings into hidden treasures. Life turned into memory. Each element of the ritual mirrored the cycles of nature itself. To watch a ceremony was perhaps to remember that everything flows, changes, and returns. You breathe in slowly and feel the same truth settle quietly inside you. The mystery, once again, lingers. Archaeologists have found evidence of charred bones, suggesting cremation was sometimes practiced, alongside burials of whole bodies. Why one and not the other? Why here and not elsewhere? Historians still debate the significance of these choices, but the silence of the mounds does not yield clear answers. Perhaps it was never meant to. Perhaps the power of ceremony lies in the act, not the explanation. As you linger in thought, the scene fades into something even softer. The fires burn lower, their embers glowing like quiet stars on the ground. People drift away, some singing gently, others whispering prayers only the earth could hear. The mounds stand silent again, their purpose fulfilled for the night. Tomorrow, or the next season, or the next generation, the ceremonies will return. The cycle is endless, patient, and calm. You close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of such a ceremony. The air is cool, the earth steady beneath your feet. The silence is not empty but full, filled with the weight of presence, with the quiet dignity of people gathering to honor something greater than themselves. It is a silence that comforts, like a blanket pulled gently over your shoulders. The night grows deeper, and the earthworks fade into shadow, but their stillness remains with you. The ceremonies are gone, yet their echoes linger, soft as a lullaby. The ground holds the memory of footsteps, of offerings, of voices long faded. You walk slowly away, but the calm of the earthworks follows, settling into your breath, steady and unhurried. The path continues, winding away from the clearing where ceremonies once glowed in firelight. Now the forest thickens again, the canopy spreading wide, the air cool and steady. You walk slowly, listening to the crunch of leaves underfoot, and you begin to notice how even the land itself seems arranged with quiet care. The mounds, the circles, the long embankments, none of them happened by chance. They reveal a kind of wisdom that did not shout, but whispered patiently through careful hands and measured steps. You pause and imagine how these ancient builders worked. There were no machines humming, no metal rulers or modern survey tools. Yet they shaped vast landscapes with accuracy, so consistent that even now, satellites trace their alignments with awe. They must have used the simplest tools, cords stretched taut, wooden stakes set firm in the soil, sightlines marked by the rising sun or the pole star. And still, with such humble instruments, they created designs that remain precise across fields, forests, and river valleys. One recorded detail tells us that the Hopewell and later Mississippian people aligned certain mounds with extraordinary accuracy to cardinal directions. North, south, east, and west lines drawn not by chance, but by intention. To do this without compasses or telescopes meant patient observation, repeated trials, and long memory. They watched the sky, they marked the shadows, and they trusted in rhythms that returned year after year. It was not speed, but persistence that gave them their accuracy. You smiled gently, realizing that sometimes slow progress is the most enduring. And here lies the mystery. How did they coordinate so many people, moving earth basket by basket, across distances that spanned entire regions? The physical labor alone was immense, but the greater puzzle is the organization. Who planned the alignments? Who remembered the measurements? How did hundreds, perhaps thousands, move in harmony without the chaos of disorder? The silence of history keeps their methods hidden, but the results remain mounds that still stand, lines that still point true. You picture the scene. A long open field at dawn. Groups of people gather, each holding woven baskets. The leader stands with a cord stretched between two stakes, checking the line against the rising sun. He nods, and the work begins. The baskets move in rhythm, filled with earth, emptied in place, again and again. The pace is slow but steady, like the breathing of the land itself. Over weeks, months, perhaps years, the mound rises. Its sides are straight, its base square, its alignment true. The wisdom is not only in planning, but in patience. There is something deeply calming in thinking of that patience. No rush, no frantic pushing forward, just steady repetition, one basket after another. You realize that such wisdom applies, even now, in the smallest tasks. A garden grows with the same rhythm. A candle burns down grain by grain. Even your own breath comes slowly, filling and emptying without hurry. The builders knew this rhythm. They trusted it, and they worked within it. That is why their monuments remain. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of geometry encoded in these earthworks, perfect squares, precise circles, long parallel embankments. Some align with rivers, others with the stars, some with both. To see such shapes from the ground is to feel their order pressing gently against the chaos of the natural world. To see them from above, as we can now, is to marvel at the vision they held long before flight was possible. They must have imagined the shape in their minds and translated it into earth, one careful step at a time. The question still lingers. Did they calculate with numbers or with intuition? Some scholars suggest they understood ratios, symmetry, and balance. Others believe they worked through observation, measuring not with symbols, but with sight and memory. Historians still debate whether such precision required formal mathematics, or whether it was the result of communal practice passed down through generations. In either case, the wisdom shines through not in formulas written on paper, but in soil shaped to endure. In your mind, the scene softens. The building is steady, not hurried. Laughter may rise now and then, but mostly there is quiet focus. The steady pour of soil from baskets becomes like rainfall, a rhythm that shapes the hours. Stakes mark the lines, cords stretch taut, and each morning shadows are checked to confirm alignment. These simple tools, repeated with care, create remarkable precision. Monk's Mound at Cahokia, one of the greatest achievements, grew from this same tradition. Larger in area than the Great Pyramid of Giza, it was raised basket by basket, layer upon layer, until it stood as a monumental square aligned to the cardinal directions. Its construction spanned generations, each group adding their effort without expectation of completion. The true wisdom lay not only in measurement, but in vision, the faith to begin something immense, trusting that others would carry it forward. The builders' wisdom was not only technical, but communal. They shared knowledge, they shared effort, and they shared belief. Without all three, the mounds could never have risen. This is perhaps the deepest lesson. Wisdom is not the property of a single mind, but the harmony of many. The earth remembers not just the shape of geometry, but the rhythm of hands working together. As you linger with this thought, the forest around you grows very quiet. You hear only the faint rustle of leaves, the soft pulse of your own breath. The builders knew this silence too, pausing at dusk when the day's labor ended, watching the sky shift colors. Perhaps they sat at the edge of the mound, watching fireflies rise, feeling the coolness spread. The wisdom of rest joined the wisdom of work, each balancing the other. You smile, imagining that they, too, found humor in their endless baskets of earth, joking lightly about their sore arms. The path stretches on, but you carry with you the sense of calm patience, the quiet genius of those who shaped landscapes with such care. Their wisdom remains in the ground beneath your feet, steady, enduring, and gentle. And like them, you find that slowing down, repeating small actions, and trusting the rhythm of time is its own kind of sacred geometry. The forest parts, and before you spreads an open sweep of grass beneath the slow turning of the sky. Here the horizon feels nearer, as if the land itself rises to meet the stars. You pause, drawing in a quiet breath, and sense that the ancient builders were not only shaping the ground beneath their feet, but also giving form to patterns traced in the heavens. The earth became their canvas, the sky their guide. Among the most extraordinary examples is the Serpent Mound of Ohio, an earthen effigy nearly 1/4 of a mile long. Its winding body curves gracefully across a ridge, ending in a great spiral that appears to cradle or release an egg-shaped mound. This design is more than art, it is alignment. Researchers have shown that the serpent's head points directly to the summer solstice sunset, while its coils correspond to significant lunar positions. Such precision was no accident. It reflects generations of careful watching, patient marking, and profound understanding of celestial rhythms. Standing before it in your mind, you realize these works connected sky and earth, time and place. They were both monument and message, reminding each generation of its place within a universe alive with order and mystery. You imagine the builders watching the sky, night after night, generation after generation. They noticed when the sun rose a little further north each morning, and when it drifted back south again. They marked when the moon climbed higher, when its path sank lower, and how these rhythms returned with a regularity that gave order to time itself. With no written charts or telescopes, they carried this knowledge in memory, passing it on like a gentle flame. At Cahokia, the great city on the Mississippi, another remarkable structure stands, the so-called Woodhenge. It was a circle of massive wooden posts, carefully placed to mark the rising sun at solstices and equinoxes. From the center of the circle, observers could see the sun crest exactly at certain posts, signaling the turn of seasons. In this way, the people created a calendar not on parchment, but on the very ground they walked each day. The wisdom of the sky was woven into the soil. You picture standing there at dawn. The air is cool, dew clings to the grass, and a hush settles over the gathering. Slowly, the first rays of sunlight slip above the horizon. They shine directly along the line of two posts, just as expected. The people murmur softly, perhaps offering thanks or beginning a ritual. In that moment, earth and sky speak the same language. You smile gently, because the image feels like a quiet celebration of time itself. The mystery, of course, is why they chose these alignments and what meaning they carried. Some believe they were practical, guiding agriculture by marking planting and harvest seasons. Others see them as spiritual, linking human life with the eternal cycles of the cosmos. Historians still debate the purpose of these alignments. But whether practical or sacred, or both, the fact remains that the builders understood the sky with patience and precision that we sometimes forget in our hurried age. The thought soothes you, because it reveals a slower rhythm of living. To notice the solstice, you must watch the sun each morning, patient and steady. To follow the moon's cycle, you must mark its position night after night, year after year. There is no rushing such knowledge. It grows like a tree, ring by ring, season by season. The builders trusted this rhythm, and in doing so, they inscribed the heavens onto the land. You let your mind wander further. Perhaps entire communities gathered during solstices, watching the sun rise or set along the lines of their mounds. Fires burned gently, smoke rising into the dawn. Children leaned sleepily against their parents, while elders pointed out the changing sky. The event was not loud or dramatic, but carried a calm wonder. The turning of the seasons was not feared, but welcomed, another reminder of the order that held both sky and soil. The Serpent Mound itself carries a deeper layer of mystery. Some believe it symbolized fertility. Others say it marked cycles of life and death. Still others suggest it was a cosmic calendar of sun and moon. No single answer satisfies. Yet perhaps that is the point. The earthwork was large enough, graceful enough, to hold many meanings at once. It was both art and science, both map and myth. As you walk through this quiet field in your imagination, you sense how the builders united opposites. The sky above is vast, beyond reach, yet they brought it down to earth. The soil beneath your feet is humble, ordinary, yet they lifted it to mirror the heavens. This union of above and below is itself a kind of wisdom. It whispers that the universe is not divided, but connected, and that to walk the earth is also to walk beneath the stars. You slow your steps, and the air seems gentler. The builder's patience becomes your own. You realize that in your daily life, too, you can pause to notice the sky. You can watch a sunset without hurry, trace the curve of the moon, or simply feel the warmth of daylight shifting hour by hour. These small acts reconnect you to rhythms older than memory. They remind you that you, too, are part of the same map. The Woodhenge posts are gone now, but reconstructions allow us to see how they once stood. The serpent still lies across its ridge, silent, waiting. They are not loud monuments, yet they endure. Perhaps that is the truest sign of wisdom, not building to dominate, but to harmonize. The alignments did not bend the sky to human will, they reflected it. In that reflection, human lives found order and meaning. You breathe out slowly, imagining the night settling over the fields. The stars wheel above, as they always have, as they always will. The mounds rest quietly below, their shapes aligned to those same stars. The builders are long gone, their names forgotten, yet their wisdom still guides the eye from horizon to horizon. You smile softly, feeling that you, too, walk within that same map, your steps gently aligned with the timeless rhythm of earth and sky. You walk deeper into the valley, where the land rises with a gentle slope. It is not steep, yet as your eyes follow its ascent, you realize you are facing a giant of earth. Monk's Mound stands before you, the largest mound ever built in North America, nearly 100 feet high and covering more than 14 acres. Its presence is quiet but undeniable, like a sleeping hill shaped by human intention. You pause, taking a slow breath, and imagine the hands that raised it. The mound was not the work of a moment, but of patience, layer upon layer. People filled woven baskets with soil from nearby pits, sometimes walking long distances, carrying 30 or 40 pounds at a time. Step after step, they climbed the slope, emptied their loads, pressed the earth into place, and returned for more. It was a rhythm as steady as a heartbeat, repeated thousands of times. The thought of millions of basket loads can feel overwhelming, yet also strangely calming, like water filling a vessel, drop by drop. You smile faintly, thinking the builders must have developed very strong legs, though they might have dreamed wistfully of wheelbarrows. Archaeologists discovered that the soil was not simply piled at random. The builders layered clay, sand, and loam in deliberate patterns. This gave strength, prevented erosion, and allowed the mound to endure through centuries of wind and rain. Their knowledge came not from books, but from generations of watching. How rivers shifted, how gardens held moisture, how fields drained after storms. The result was both practical and graceful, a structure that feels enduring not only because of its size, but because it was shaped with such careful wisdom. You imagine the scene of construction. The sun hangs high. Workers climb in slow processions, each basket swinging gently. Children gather smaller handfuls of soil, eager to imitate their elders. Fires burn in nearby hearths, and the smell of corn cooking drifts on the breeze. At times, the work may have felt endless, but the mound was more than a task. It was a shared purpose, a living project that gave shape to the community's devotion. The mystery is how they organized such large-scale efforts. To build Monk's Mound required coordination across many families, perhaps even across generations. Was there a leader who directed the process, or did the community act out of shared belief? Archaeologists find no written records to answer this. What remains is the evidence of completion itself, the mound standing as proof that somehow they achieved unity. The silence of this question adds to the quiet awe you feel as you imagine the work. Other mounds, though smaller, reveal similar care. At Cahokia, smaller platform mounds surrounded the great central plaza. Each one was built with the same method of basket layering, each one shaped with straight sides and flat tops. The edges were aligned with precision so that the plazas formed right angles. This level of accuracy shows that the builders used careful surveying techniques. Wooden stakes, strings, and sightlines were their tools. Simple in form, yet remarkably effective, you let your steps trace the lines of these ancient geometries. The ground feels steady beneath your feet, and you realize that stability was the essence of the builder's craft. They built not for the moment, but for centuries. In our world of quick construction, their patience seems almost unbelievable. Each basket of soil might have seemed small, but together they created monuments that endure longer than stone houses or wooden towers. You chuckle gently at the thought that patience is sometimes the best building material. One striking detail is that the soil was not all taken from one place. Instead, pits were scattered around the landscape. This prevented scarring the earth in one location, and it spread the impact evenly. It also meant that builders carried soil from many directions, bringing pieces of the broader land together into one mound. In a way, Each mound became a gathering of landscapes, a symbolic unity of the surrounding world. Imagine working at dawn, when the air is cool and mist crawls across the fields. The baskets are lighter then, the steps easier. Voices murmur softly, maybe a song rising to set a rhythm. Later in the day, the sun warms the backs of the workers, and sweat darkens their tunics. Yet still the line continues, up and down, steady as the breathing of the earth. There is no rush, only persistence. Over time, the great mounds grew into more than structures of earth. They became anchors for community life, places where people gathered, remembered, and honored. On their broad platforms stood ceremonial lodges, council houses, and temples. Beneath every step was not only soil but meaning, each layer a record of countless hands and countless days. To climb the slope was to climb across memory itself, step by step, year by year. Archaeologists have uncovered curious details within the layers, small deposits of shells, carefully placed stones, or traces of charcoal buried deliberately. These offerings suggest the builders worked with both intention and reverence. Each basket of soil was more than labor. It carried significance, woven into the very body of the mound. The construction was practical, yes, but it was also symbolic. A blending of the material and the spiritual. You picture the builders, and admiration settles in. They had no iron, no beasts of burden, no wheeled carts. Only ropes, baskets, and their own strength. Yet through patience and cooperation, they created structures that endure for centuries. Their quiet genius shows what human beings can achieve when vision is paired with persistence. Now, under moonlight, the mounds rest in soft outlines, blending into the fields. They rise like gentle hills, yet their form reveals intention. The patience of those who built them lingers still, offering a lesson for today. That steady steps, taken without hurry, can create something lasting. You smile softly, thinking that perhaps the builders never imagined someone would be reflecting on their baskets of earth so many centuries later. Yet here you are, feeling their presence in the calm of the land. The soil they moved has become more than earth. It has become memory, connection, and a gentle reminder that time itself builds, layer by layer, just like their mounds. You linger on the wide terraces of earthworks, but your attention soon drifts back toward the river. The Mississippi flows quietly in the distance, a steady ribbon of water that has guided lives for thousands of years. Its current is not hurried, yet it moves with certainty, carrying silt, carrying stories, carrying connections between far-off places. As you watch, you sense that these waters were not barriers. They were pathways binding people across landscapes the way threads bind fabric. For ancient communities, the river was both road and resource. Long before paved streets or railways, dugout canoes slid across the surface, silent except for the drip of paddles. Villages upriver and downriver exchanged more than greetings. They traded corn, dried fish, and hides, but also ideas, songs, and beliefs. To follow the river was to enter a chain of connections stretching far beyond the horizon. You imagine the soft creak of wood against water, and you smile at how ancient canoe paddlers probably disliked mosquitoes just as much as modern campers. Historical evidence shows that objects traveled astonishing distances. Copper from the Great Lakes found its way to the Mississippi Valley. Shell beads from the Gulf of Mexico appeared in burial mounds far to the north. Chert, obsidian, and mica also made their journeys. Each item whispered of exchange, of networks that tied together communities separated by hundreds of miles. It was not a global system, but for those times it might have felt vast, almost endless. You picture traders setting out at dawn, their canoes heavy with goods, the mist lifting from the water's surface. They would paddle steadily, stopping at familiar bends where campsites had been used for generations. Fires would be lit, meals shared, and stories told as stars glimmered overhead. These journeys were not only about material goods. They created bonds of trust, weaving friendships across rivers and forests. One mystery remains in how exactly such wide networks were coordinated. There was no central authority, no written contracts, yet goods flowed reliably. Archaeologists find caches of materials in burial mounds, suggesting that the exchanges were not merely economic. They had ceremonial weight. Shells from distant coasts, copper-shaped into ornaments, and stones carved with care became offerings that linked people not just to each other, but to the wider natural world. The river carried more than goods, carried meaning. To travel along its course was to follow a story older than memory. Even now, when you stand on its banks, you feel a calm power in the flow. It is never still, yet never rushed. It seems to whisper patience, as if reminding you that every journey, no matter how long, begins with one gentle stroke of the paddle. You laugh quietly to yourself, realizing the Mississippi would have been the original slow travel movement out. As you walk along an imagined ancient shoreline, you see families gathering near the water's edge. Children splash at the shallows, while elders repair nets and shape canoes. The daily rhythm is soft, yet purposeful. In the evenings, when the fires flicker and smoke rises into the night sky, stories are told about journeys to distant places, about the wonders carried back along the waters. The community listens, half dreaming, as flames and river reflections blur into one dot in Cahokia. The great city near today's St. Louis, the river served as a lifeline. Goods from far and wide arrived here, filling the plazas with color and variety. The people who climbed the mounds may have worn ornaments that traveled hundreds of miles, their gleam carrying distant landscapes into the heart of the city. The Mississippi connected Cahokia not only to neighboring villages, but to entire regions. It was both artery and horizon. Mysteries deepen when you consider how some of these connections reached the Gulf of Mexico. Archaeologists have found marine shells carved into intricate designs, carried from far southern coasts all the way to the valley. How such fragile items survived the long journey is remarkable. Were they carried carefully in padded baskets, passed from group to group? Or did dedicated traders make the entire journey themselves? Historians still debate the details, leaving us with soft questions that float like mist over the water dot. Imagine paddling for days, guided by the sun and the stars, your arms moving in rhythm with companions. The riverbanks pass slowly, forests, giving way to meadows blending into marshlands. Birds call overhead, their wings flashing briefly in the light. At night, the river becomes a mirror for the moon. The steady current carries you forward, and each bend feels like an invitation to continue just a little further. The rivers were not only about travel. They shaped settlement patterns. Villages sprang up along their edges, fields stretched toward. Their fertile floodplains and sacred mounds rose near their banks. Water meant life, and life meant community. Standing near a mound today, you can almost hear the gentle lap of waves that once carried boats filled with gifts, stories, and songs. That it is easy to overlook rivers in a modern world where roads dominate. But in the Mississippi Valley, they were highways, invisible yet enduring. They did not need maintenance crews, only rain and time. And unlike dusty roads, they sparkled under sunlight, their surfaces shifting like silk in the breeze. To travel them was to move not just across space, but across experiences. You sigh contentedly, amused at the thought that ancient travelers never had to deal with traffic jams, though perhaps the occasional sandbar was just as frustrating. Over the centuries, as mounds rose and communities thrived, rivers remained. Constant, they connected the Adena, Hopewell, and Mississippian cultures, even as generations passed. Though the builders left no maps, The rivers themselves were maps, guiding and shaping the flow of life. The waters remembered, even when people forgot. Now, as night deepens in your imagination, you see the river once more. Its surface gleams with starlight, moving silently past. Somewhere upriver or downriver, a canoe glides, its paddle dipping. In rhythm, carrying unseen travelers. You feel at peace knowing that these same waters once carried stories, connections, and dreams. And like the mounds themselves, the river whispers still, telling its story in the softest voice of all its flow. You picture yourself stepping into a village that once thrived in the Mississippi Valley. It is morning, and the air is soft with the scent of damp earth after a light rain. Smoke curls upward from a few small hearths, drifting lazily toward the pale sky. The mounds rise nearby, silent and watchful. But today your focus rests on the rhythm of daily life that unfolds gently around them. Here, people did not live in isolation. They lived together, each moment weaving into a fabric of community. The houses stood round with gentle, curved roofs, their thatched coverings glistening with morning dew. Some were small, built for families, while others stretched larger, ready to welcome gatherings. You picture stepping inside, where the packed earth floor feels firm yet warm, smoothed by countless bare feet. The walls, woven from wood and clay, kept out the sharp winds of winter and softened the heat of summer. In the shadows, baskets brimmed with corn and beans, quiet promises of sustenance. The space feels like a nest sheltered, safe, quietly alive. Village life moved in rhythm with the earth and the turning of the seasons. Cornfields stretched tall nearby, joined by beans and broad-leafed squash. These three sisters grew together, each helping the others thrive. Corn lifted high, beans twined upward, squash held moisture close to the soil. This cycle of planting and harvest measured time more gently than any clock. You think of reminders flashing on your own calendar, and you smile. Perhaps their system was kinder. Children ran barefoot through grasses, laughter rising like birdsong. They played with sticks, stones, and small wooden dolls, inventing whole worlds in the shifting light. Elders watched, weaving nets or mending tools, their hands steady, their expressions soft. Nothing felt rushed. Life unfolded as calmly as the slow current of the river. Cooking fires drew the village together in a rhythm both practical and tender. Women leaned over clay pots, stirring stews rich with corn, beans, and bits of wild game. The aroma drifted through the air, mingling with the soft curl of wood smoke, wrapping the settlement in a scent at once grounding and comforting. As the sun lifted higher, neighbors paused along their paths to exchange greetings, sometimes sharing food, sometimes carrying stories from other camps. These daily gestures wove ties of trust, as firm as the woven mats laid across their earthen floors. Archaeological evidence shows that both woodland and Mississippian peoples cultivated more than fields. They cultivated community. Storage pits, carved deep into the soil, held grain in common. These reserves were carefully guarded, but shared when need arose. A quiet testimony that survival depended on cooperation as much as on harvest. The earth was generous, yet it asked for unity in return. Still, mysteries linger. Some villages disappeared abruptly, their homes abandoned, tools left behind as though dropped mid-task. The causes are uncertain, perhaps flood, drought, disease, or changes in trade. The soil keeps silence. You imagine, though, families walking away at dawn, their shapes fading into mist. Your thoughts drift to a market morning. Baskets of dried corn, smoked fish, clay pots, and shell beads lay in neat rows, while children tugged at parents' arms, marveling at the colors. Voices rose not in clamor, but in gentle murmur, a harmony like the hum of bees. Community was sustained here, not only by food, but by presence. In the evenings, the light softened. Shadows of the mounds stretched long across the village paths. People gathered near fires, listening to the rhythmic beat of drums or the low hum of voices chanting. Stories rose into the air like sparks, floating upward to mingle with the stars. Tales of ancestors, of animals, of sky and earth, all blended into a living memory. These nights held a sacred kind of rest, where work and worry dissolved into shared wonder. Daily life was not only a matter of survival. It was woven with meaning, each task carrying a quiet thread of the sacred. The mounds reminded the people that their lives rested within cycles larger than themselves. Ancestors lay buried within those earthen monuments, not gone but present, folded into the heart of each village. To walk a path, to stir a hearth, to plant a row of corn was also to honor those who had walked before. Every step seemed accompanied by memory. The pace was unhurried, almost dreamlike. When rain came, people paused, listening to its drumming on thatched roofs. When the sun pressed hot upon the fields, work shifted beneath the shade of trees. Even the creatures seemed to share this rhythm, deer grazing slowly, birds calling softly, insects humming in the grasses. The entire landscape breathed together, without urgency. You smiled faintly at the thought that in such a world, the modern deadline would be as strange as a clock in a forest. Villages often rose near springs or gentle streams. These waters sustained crops and soothed the spirit. Women filled clay jars, children splashed at the edges, while the constant murmur of water accompanied conversations. The rivers gave, the earth gave, and people gave thanks, though no written record preserves their prayers. Night settles gently. You sit outside, a curved roof house, as a faint breeze stirs the grasses. Smoke drifts from a dying fire, and stars bloom one by one against the sky. The village quiets, with only a baby's cry, a dog's bark, or the creak of wood reminding you that life continues. In this stillness, peace lingers. Daily life in the villages was not glamorous, but it was steady. The people planted, harvested, cooked, built, and rested. They laughed and mourned, just as we do. They sought security in one another, finding meaning in cycles of work and celebration. Though centuries separate you from them, you recognize the same desires that shape your own days: food, shelter, belonging, and a sense of place in a larger story. Now, as your eyelids grow heavy, you imagine lying down inside one of those ancient houses, the earth cool beneath you, the night air drifting in through a small doorway. Outside, the mounds keep watch, silent but eternal. Tomorrow will bring planting or fishing or gathering wood, but tonight only stillness remains. The village breathes with you, slow and steady, and you rest in its rhythm. You find yourself drifting forward through time, the quiet villages giving way to something larger, more intricate, more enduring. The Mississippi Valley unfolds before you like a vast green quilt, stitched with rivers and forests. But now your attention lingers on a place that grew into a true city, Cahokia. Once, this was the largest center of mound culture in North America, a hub of life, ritual, and trade that seemed to gather the voices of countless villages into one steady hum. The morning mist lingers over wide fields, and through the haze you glimpse the outline of Monk's Mound, rising quietly yet undeniably above the land. Its size speaks not of chance, but of intention, built basket by basket, each load of soil carried by human hands. Layer upon layer, it became a monument so vast it still dominates the Illinois plain today. Standing near it, you feel both humbled and comforted, as if those who built it had placed permanence into the earth. Cahokia itself did not emerge overnight. Like the steady rings of a tree, it expanded with patience. Around the year 1050, the city's population swelled dramatically, reaching tens of thousands. Families traveled from distant valleys, drawn by fertile soil, by waterways linking communities, and by the magnetic sense of belonging to something larger. You picture this gradual gathering, people arriving in small groups, until the city pulsed with shared rhythm and quiet purpose. The houses here echoed those of smaller villages. Curved roofs, thatched coverings, packed earth floors, but multiplied. Thousands of times they formed neighborhoods, blocks, and districts. Lanes wound between homes, leading to courtyards where families gathered. Fires burned steadily, sending up columns of smoke that mixed with the morning fog. You imagine the air filled with the layered sound of voices, footsteps, animals, and children at play. It was not noisy in the way of modern cities, but alive in its own gentle cadence. Fields stretched outward, planted with corn that swayed like waves under the wind. The harvest sustained not only Cahokia itself, but supported gatherings, feasts, and rituals. Crops grew in abundance, and surplus grain could be stored in communal structures. In this, the city was more than survival. It was stability, the kind that allows people to dream, to create, and to build beyond the needs of the day. You think of your own kitchen cupboard, and the quiet relief of knowing there is food enough, and you understand a little of their peace. Ceremonial life flourished at Cahokia. Near Monk's Mound, smaller mounds rose in careful arrangement, forming plazas where people gathered. Archaeologists believe these spaces hosted markets, rituals, and civic gatherings. You picture crowds moving slowly across open ground, voices mingling like the rustle of leaves. Some carried goods for trade shell beads, copper ornaments, finely crafted pottery. Others came for ceremonies marked by dance, song, and offerings. The plazas breathed with purpose, each step echoing something greater than any single person. And yet, mysteries remain. Why did Cahokia rise so swiftly, and why did it eventually decline after the 14th century? Climate change, resource strain, internal conflict, these are possibilities, but no single answer prevails. The soil holds fragments of their story, but silence too. Historians still debate the precise reasons for both the flourishing and the fading. The unknown lingers gently, like fog over the mounds, reminding you that not every story ends with clarity. You linger on an image of the Woodhenge, a circle of tall posts near Cahokia. These timbers once marked the cycles of the sun, aligning with solstices and equinoxes. On certain mornings, the rising sun would appear precisely between two posts, signaling the change of season. Imagine standing there, watching the first light break, knowing the community around you also looked up, sensing their place in a greater order. It is like glancing at a calendar, but one drawn across the sky. Daily life here balanced the ordinary and the extraordinary. Families tended gardens, shaped pottery, or hunted along riverbanks. Traders brought in shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, and obsidian from far to the west. Children played among houses while elders recited stories. At the same time, leaders coordinated labor for building projects of astonishing scale. The rhythm of life moved both inward, toward hearth and home, and outward, toward city and cosmos. Evening fell with a particular beauty over Cahokia, dipped low, casting long shadows of the mounds across plazas and fields. Fires glowed warm, drawing neighbors together. The city's hum softened, and under the night sky, chants and drumbeats sometimes rose, reminding all that life here was never only about the physical. The sacred and the everyday folded into one another like woven cloth. Archaeological excavations reveal layers upon layers of human presence, houses rebuilt, fires relit, fields replanted. Time left its marks, not in sudden upheavals, but in the slow accumulation of ordinary days. To walk the grounds of Cahokia today is to sense that weight of time, but also the tenderness of it. Generations passed their lives here, shaping the land and being shaped by it in return. When you pause in thought, you notice how calm this great city feels, even in your imagination. It is not the chaos of horns and traffic, but the murmur of a community bound by cycles, rituals, and shared purpose. To live in Cahokia was to know the presence of others in every task, to sense your place in a living network. It was to rise with the sun, to work with your hands, to rest in the cool of evening, always with the mounds watching gently over you. And now, as you drift in your own quiet, you carry this image, a city that grew from soil and hands, that rose, in harmony with rivers and seasons, that stood for centuries as a testament to human patience and vision. The mounds are silent now, but their presence remains. You close your eyes, and you can almost hear the faint rhythm of footsteps in the plazas, the soft rustle of cornfields, the low murmur of voices sharing stories by firelight. Cahokia lives on in that gentle hum, and tonight it carries you deeper into calm. The night drifts onward in your imagination, and once again you return to the great city of Cahokia. This time, you step away from the enormous bulk of Monk's Mound and wander gently toward a clearing where tall posts once stood in a circle. The wood henge, as archaeologists now call it, was not a home or a defensive wall. It was something quieter, more profound, a calendar drawn across the sky, crafted not with ink or parchment, but with timber and light. The circle was wide, over 400 feet across, with massive red cedar posts marking its circumference. Each post was placed with intention, aligned to match the rising and setting of the sun at significant points in the year. Imagine walking among them at dawn, the air cool, the earth firm under your feet, the sky blushing faintly with morning light. As the sun crested the horizon, it would rise precisely between two posts, and the entire community would know that a turning point in the year had arrived, the winter solstice, when days are shortest and the cold settles deep into the soil, the summer solstice, when light lingers long and crops stretch high, the equinoxes, when day and night balance delicately, neither overtaking the other. Each of these moments was marked by the sun aligning with posts in the wood henge, a cosmic clock guiding the lives of thousands. Historians still debate the exact ceremonies that took place here, but the alignment itself is beyond doubt. You picture the scene on a solstice morning, families rising early, gathering quietly, their breath visible in the cool air. The posts stand like sentinels against the pale horizon. Silence holds the crowd as the first rays pierce the gap, flooding the plaza. With golden light, a soft murmur passes through the people, not shouting, not fanfare, but a recognition, as if everyone had been waiting for the sky itself to speak. That gentle moment tied the community to the cosmos, assuring them that their days moved in harmony. With something far greater, archaeologists discovered not one wood henge, but several, built and rebuilt over time. The posts, being wood, eventually decayed, but their patterns in the soil remained. By studying the stains and depressions, researchers traced circles, lines, and alignments that revealed a sophisticated awareness of the heavens. This was no accident of guesswork. It required careful observation over generations, patient attention to the slow march of sunrise across the horizon. It was a science, but also a devotion, a way of making the intangible visible. You might imagine one of those ancient observers, perhaps an elder wrapped in furs, keeping watch year after year. Day by day, they mark where the sun rises, moving slightly northward or southward as the months pass. Over time, they understand the pattern, and they know where to place the posts so that the circle captures the turning points. It is a project of patience, of long memory, of trust in the cycles of the world. You smile at the thought, realizing how rare such patience feels in a world of digital calendars and flashing reminders. Yet, the wood henge was not only about the sky. It was also about community. Gatherings here bound people together, reinforcing their shared rhythms. Agriculture depended on knowing the seasons, when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for leaner months. Rituals deepened that awareness, weaving practicality with meaning. To stand together, watching the sun mark its eternal course, was to remind each person that their lives were part of a larger harmony. In this way, Woodhenge is not so different from modern traditions. Think of fireworks on New Year's Eve, or the lighting of candles at a holiday, or the collective pause when the clock strikes midnight. These are not only about measuring time, they are about experiencing it together, anchoring fleeting days in shared rituals. The Cahokians, too, gathered under sky and timber, finding in the heavens a mirror of their own cycles of birth, growth, rest, and renewal. As you walk slowly among the imagined posts, you notice how the Woodhenge blends natural and human effort. The posts themselves came from living trees, chosen and cut, their bark stripped, their trunks lifted upright into the ground. They once grew tall in the forests along the river, whispering in the wind. Now they stood silent in a circle, their lives redirected toward marking the sky. Even in death, the trees served a new purpose, bridging earth and sun, reminding the community that all forms pass and transform. Even now, the site of the Woodhenge holds a special quiet. Tourists visit, archaeologists measure, but when the sun rises on a solstice morning, the ancient alignment still speaks. A post placed centuries ago still points to the same eternal horizon. You may not be standing there yourself, but in your imagination, you can feel the warmth of that rising light, a reminder that time flows gently, season by season, always returning, always renewing. As night settles into your thoughts again, you let the Woodhenge dissolve into memory. Its circle of posts fades back into the soil, but the sense of connection remains. The Cahokians once traced the heavens with timber and patience, and their effort whispers across centuries. You feel a calm recognition. The stars and the sun mark your life too, even if you rarely notice. The same sky that guided them continues overhead tonight, steady and eternal. The Woodhenge, like so many parts of Cahokia, was both practical and spiritual, both ordinary and extraordinary. It was a calendar, but also a gathering place. It was a reminder that the seasons return, that the earth is reliable, that time is not only passing but repeating, offering renewal. And in that cycle, there is comfort, like a lullaby sung over and over, each time slightly different, yet always the same. So you let the vision rest softly in your thoughts. A wide circle of wooden posts, dawn spilling light through the gaps. A community murmuring as they welcome the rising sun. You breathe with ease, reminded that your own days turn in gentle cycles, work and pause, night and morning, waking and sleep. Within that rhythm, steady and kind, you discover a quiet peace, waiting for you. You continue your gentle walk through the memory of Cahokia, and this time the air is filled not with the glow of sunrise, but with the quiet presence of things carried from faraway places. Around the great mounds, scattered through burials and rituals, archaeologists have uncovered objects that did not belong to the Mississippi Valley alone. Bright turquoise, shimmering seashells, copper hammered into delicate shapes, and obsidian sharp as glass, all of these traveled long distances before finding rest in the soil of Cahokia. The story of trade here is not one of hurried markets or bustling caravans. It is slower, softer, like rivers that carry leaves downstream, or like winds that move seeds across fields. The people of Cahokia were connected to others through pathways of exchange that stretched outward in many directions. North to the Great Lakes, south to the Gulf of Mexico, west into the plains, and east into the mountains. Across these distances, goods and stories traveled, carried by hands, by canoes, by memory, Imagine a seashell found in a mound near Cahokia. Its spiral glimmers faintly, even after centuries underground. It once came from warm waters far to the south, collected along the Gulf Coast, perhaps from a beach where waves lapped gently in the heat of the sun. Someone picked it up, admired its sheen, and began the long process of bringing it northward. By canoe, by walking path, by exchange with another community, it eventually arrived in the Mississippi Valley. There, it became part of a necklace, or a ritual offering, or an adornment for someone of status. What had been shaped by the sea now rested in the soil of the river valley. Copper told a similar story. From the shores of Lake Superior, people extracted nuggets of raw metal, sometimes glimmering green with age, sometimes shining red in the sunlight. They hammered it carefully, shaping tools, ornaments, or ceremonial pieces. From there, the copper traveled southward, changing hands many times before reaching Cahokia. Archaeologists have found copper plates shaped into abstract figures, reminders that this was not just trade for survival, but trade for meaning. Objects carried stories with them, connecting communities across thousands of miles. Turquoise, beloved for its blue-green shimmer, journeyed even farther. Its origin may have been in the arid lands of the Southwest, where deserts baked under the sun and distant mesas glowed orange at dusk. To hold turquoise in the Mississippi Valley was to hold a piece of land very different from one's own, a reminder that the world extended outward beyond forests and rivers. These small stones carried both beauty and mystery, sparking wonder in those who received them. And obsidian volcanic glass, sharper than steel, was carried from the Rocky Mountains. Imagine holding a blade made of black glass, so smooth, so fragile, and yet so useful. For the people of Cahokia, such an object was not just practical. It was a marvel, a fragment of fire and stone from lands they might never see with their own eyes. The quiet mystery lies not only in the goods themselves, but in the networks that carried them. How did these communities, without wheels, without horses, manage to move objects across such vast spaces? The answer rests in patience and in the steady flow of human contact. Village to village, family to family, goods moved along like whispers passed through generations. Each step of the journey was slow, and yet, over time, seashells reached the prairies, copper reached the valleys, and obsidian reached the fields. Archaeologists studying these exchanges have noted how similar patterns of art and ritual appear across distant regions. A particular style of pottery, a certain way of engraving copper, a design repeated in shell beads, all suggest that along with goods, ideas were also exchanged. Trade was not merely about objects, it was about connections. It was about recognizing kinship across distance, about weaving the scattered human presence into something like a tapestry. You can picture the atmosphere of an exchange. Perhaps not a busy marketplace, but a quiet meeting of families along the river. Canoes pulled onto the bank, fires lit as night settled in. Goods laid out slowly, admired, touched, and then traded. A string of shells for a pouch of flint. A roll of copper for woven cloth. The conversations were likely as important as the objects themselves. Friendships might have formed, marriages arranged, stories told. In this way, trade was not only economic but social, building trust and weaving connections that endured. It is easy to imagine the awe of a child in Cahokia seeing turquoise for the first time, its color brighter than any stone in the valley, or the quiet reverence of a community leader receiving copper shaped into a sacred figure. These were not mere luxuries. They were carriers of meaning, gifts from the earth that traveled across lands. Their presence in burials suggests they were also viewed as companions for the journey after life, tokens meant to connect one's spirit to the wider cosmos. The rhythms of trade mirrored the rhythms of rivers. Just as water flowed steadily, sometimes flooding, sometimes receding, So did the movement of goods. Nothing hurried, nothing frantic. A seashell might take years to reach its final resting place, but time was not measured as it is today. It was measured in seasons, in cycles of planting and harvest, in solstices marked at wood-enge. To the people of Cahokia, waiting for turquoise or copper was simply part of living within those cycles. Trade is often spoken of as commerce, but here it was closer to gift-giving, closer to the slow weaving of relationships. When you think of the turquoise, the copper, the shells, you realize they were more than objects. They were reminders that even across forests, rivers, and mountains, people found ways to connect. They found ways to share beauty, to carry fragments of distant landscapes into their own daily lives. You pause and breathe, letting the image rest. A seashell tucked within the soil of a mound, a copper ornament catching the glow of firelight, a turquoise bead moving gently from hand to hand. Each detail unhurried, each moment linked across time. All of it quiet, all of it slow, all of it quietly connected. You wander further into the hush of memory, where the ground itself becomes a book, each layer of soil, a page waiting to be read. Archaeologists, with their careful hands and patient brushes, have spent decades peeling back those pages, discovering how many lives and worlds once rested here. The surface may seem plain, just grass and earth, but beneath lies a hidden archive. Every mound is more than a heap of soil. It is a library of centuries, compressed into silence. When excavations began in earnest during the 19th and 20th centuries, scholars were astonished to find multiple layers within a single mound. At first glance, the structures appeared simple, a hill of earth rising against the horizon. But when cut open, some revealed stages of construction, one platform built upon another, as though each generation wished to honor the past by adding its own presence. This layering gave a sense of continuity, of memory preserved not in words, but in soil. One of the most famous discoveries came at Cahokia, where the vast monk's mound was revealed to contain not just a single construction, effort, but many phases. Over centuries, people added to it, shaping and reshaping, carrying countless baskets of soil to raise its height. What began as a modest platform eventually grew into the largest earthen mound in North America. The mystery lingers. Why did they continue to build upward? Was it an expression of devotion, an attempt to reach closer to the sky, or a symbol of authority renewed with each generation? The soil does not answer, only holds its quiet. Elsewhere, smaller mounds were found to contain burials, sometimes of single individuals, sometimes of groups. Within, archaeologists uncovered beads of shell, pipes carved from stone, and effigies shaped into animals. Each discovery was like a whisper from another age, offering fragments of a world once vivid, but now reduced to hints. Yet even as these objects told part of the story, they left deeper questions. Why were some burials richly adorned, while others were simple? What rituals marked these acts of interment? No written record survives, only earth preserving both presence and absence. A more puzzling detail came from the layers of soil themselves. Some mounds were built with alternating colors: light clay, dark loam, red ochre stacked deliberately. The precision suggests symbolism, perhaps representing the sky, the earth, and the underworld. Or perhaps it was purely practical, using the materials most readily available. Historians still debate whether these colors carried cosmic meaning, or if they were simply chosen for strength. As with so much else, the ground refuses to explain in certain places. Entire villages seem to vanish, leaving behind only traces. Excavations revealed hearths, post holes where houses once stood, tools of daily life, then silence. No evidence of destruction, no signs of battle, just absence. The people moved on. But why? Climate changes? Shifts in trade? Social transformations? The soil contains remnants, but not reasons. It is like finding a book missing its final chapters. Another quiet puzzle lies in the artifacts buried far deeper than expected. At some sites, objects centuries older than the mound itself were discovered within the fill. Perhaps they were heirlooms, passed down and then intentionally interred. Perhaps they were gathered from abandoned places and given new life within. The mound. Each object's journey is uncertain, each context an enigma. A shell bead might have passed through countless hands before its final rest, its story long dissolved like salt. In water, the silence of these discoveries has its own presence. When you imagine the archaeologist kneeling in the dirt, brushing away soil to reveal a shard of pottery, you feel the slowness of time itself. Each fragment is like a voice carried across centuries, fragile, partial, and incomplete. The earth does not give up its secrets easily. It offers pieces, not explanations. You might picture a mound under excavation at twilight. The grass cut back, the soil marked in layers. Workers pause as the evening air cools. Birds call in the distance. Somewhere below, a copper ornament lies untouched for 1,000 years more. There is no rush. Time has waited, and time will continue to wait. One of the strangest finds within some burial mounds was the presence of objects broken deliberately before being interred. Pottery smashed, tools bent, ornaments fractured. The act seems intentional, as if to release the spirit of the object before it joined the earth. To modern eyes, it appears wasteful. To ancient minds, it may have been a way of ensuring that the item did not simply vanish, but transformed, carrying its essence into another world. Some excavations revealed animal effigies, shaped from clay or carved into stone birds with outstretched wings, bears with rounded backs, serpents coiled in silence. Their meaning is unclear. Were they guardians of the dead? Symbols of clans? Reminders of myths now lost? Each effigy rests quietly, its voice muted, but its form still eloquent. It is. Tempting to imagine these mounds as puzzles waiting for solutions. Yet perhaps their true purpose is to remind us of mystery itself. Not everything must be explained, not every question answered. The layers beneath the soil are like layers within ourselves, memories, half remembered, dreams fading at dawn, emotions without clear names. We can excavate, study, interpret, but always something remains hidden. And perhaps it should remain so. As night deepens in your imagination, you picture walking over a grassy mound under moonlight. You know beneath your feet are layers of soil, artifacts of lives long past, stories without endings. You do not disturb them. You simply walk softly, aware of the weight of centuries below. The ground feels steady, yet within it lie questions that will never fully resolve. That unresolved presence is strangely comforting. Just as dreams need not make sense, the earth too holds its secrets without explanation. The soil still cradles what it will not fully reveal. Shards of pottery rest beside hidden burials. Colored clay lies in quiet layers, and traces of villages fade beneath grass. Each fragment speaks in whispers. Each silence lingers as a reminder. The story is unfinished, and in that incompleteness rests its gentle beauty, a beauty born not from answers, but from the hush that time itself has kept. You step softly into another chapter of the valley's long story. The air is quiet here, as if the land itself remembers the fading of voices. Great mounds still rise, but around them the sounds of villages are gone. Once there were fires burning, fields planted, markets bustling. Now only grass waves in the wind. The story of decline is not sudden or violent in tone. It is more like dusks spreading slowly across the horizon. Archaeological evidence suggests that after about 1,300, many great mound centers began to fade. Cahokia, once the largest city with Monk's Mound rising above its plazas, slowly lost its people. Homes were left empty, neighborhoods quieted. The reasons remain uncertain. Climate records hint at droughts that may have reduced corn harvests, while floods may have unsettled carefully tended fields. Nature, once an ally, may have grown less predictable. The mystery deepens when archaeologists notice the pattern across several regions, not just one. Signs of abandonment appear almost in unison. Was it families quietly moving away in search of steadier land? Or was it a deeper shift as trust in leaders waned? The earth holds its silence. Another thought rests on pressure from numbers. Cahokia may have held tens of thousands of people at its height. Such density would have strained forests, soils, and water. Resources, once abundant, may have thinned too quickly. The decline may not have been sudden, but rather the slow recognition that endless growth was impossible. The archaeological record also hints at tensions within. Some evidence shows palisades built around certain districts, suggesting fear of conflict, yet no great battles are recorded in the soil. The walls stand like whispers of unease, not declarations of war. Perhaps disputes arose over land, food, or authority. Perhaps the fabric of society stretched too thin. Disease, too, may have played a role. Though we cannot know the details, large communities often bring new vulnerabilities. Illness can spread. Where people gather, leaving whole neighborhoods empty. No clear traces remain, but absence itself tells a story. And so, by the 14th century, the great centers of the Mississippi Valley were shadows of themselves. Mounds stood tall, but the voices around them faded. Grass reclaimed the plazas. Fields fell silent. The slow retreat of human presence allowed nature to take hold once more. Trees returned. Rivers shifted. The land exhaled into quiet dot. If you walk through such a sight in your imagination, you do not hear the clamor of collapse. You hear instead a long sigh. Decline is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the weight of centuries pressing softly until life turns elsewhere. The abandonment of these centers is like a village slowly closing its shutters, one by one as night falls. What remains most mysterious is how little the people left behind in explanation. Unlike empires with written chronicles, the mound builders recorded their histories in earth, not in words. When the building stopped, so did the record. Archaeologists read layers of soil, but the voices are gone. You are left with impressions, with guesses, with the feeling of a story half told. Yet even in decline, beauty remains. The mounds did not vanish. They endured. Even as villages emptied, the earthworks stood tall against the sky. Covered in grass, softened by rain, they became part of the landscape once more. To wander among them is to sense not tragedy, but transformation. A chapter closed, another began. The people moved, but the land still remembers. You picture Cahokia after its decline. The great plaza empty at sunset. Monk's Mound still rises, casting its shadow, but no ceremonies echo across the field. The air is still. Crickets sing where once thousands gathered. It is not a scene of ruin but of return. As silence reclaims its place, other centers across. The valley tell the same tale. Earthworks stand with no villages around them. Burial mounds remain, but no new ones are built. Trade goods cease to arrive from distant regions. Networks unravel. Yet even this unraveling is calm, like threads, slipping loose from an old tapestry. The fabric does not tear violently. It simply loosens until only fragments remain. When you think of decline, you might imagine loss. But here, decline is also a release. Fields exhausted are allowed to rest. Forests regrow. Rivers reclaim their floodplains. What appears as abandonment for humans may be healing for the earth. The mounds, covered in grass and watched by birds, become part of the cycle. Historians still debate the precise causes, climate shifts, social stresses, external pressures. None alone seems enough, but together they form a pattern of fragility. Greatness is never eternal. Every culture rests on balances that can shift. A decline of the mound centers is not a failure, only a change. The people carried their traditions onward in other forms. Even if the great plazas fell silent dot as you breathe slowly, you can imagine yourself sitting on a mound during those final days, watching families walk away with baskets and tools. They do not flee in panic. They simply turn toward new horizons, leaving the earthworks behind. You hear the wind through grass, the footsteps fading. It is a gentle departure. The story of decline is also the story of impermanence. Everything built, no matter how grand, will one day return to quiet. Cities rise and cities fall. Fields flourish and fields lie fallow. Even the tallest mound is only soil, subject to rain and time. This truth is not sad, but soothing. It reminds you that nothing must last forever. To matter dot, and so the great centers of the Mississippi Valley passed into memory. Their abandonment was not the end, only another turn of the wheel. The earth absorbed their silence. The mounds endured as guardians, watching over grasslands and forests, holding mysteries in their depths. Today, you walk among them and feel the calm of their endurance, not the sorrow of their decline. Decline, in this story, is not a fall into darkness, but a soft return to the soil. The voices faded, the fires cooled, the plazas emptied. What remained was earth and sky, waiting patiently. And even now, as you drift through this memory, the quiet of abandonment becomes a lullaby, a reminder that endings are also beginnings, and silence is as natural as song. You drift now into a quieter age, when the great earthworks no longer echoed with footsteps or ceremony, but lay hidden beneath grass and seasons. For centuries, they appeared as gentle hills scattered across fields and forests, their meaning forgotten. Farmers plowed nearby, children climbed their slopes, and travelers noted them only in passing. Their deeper story remained unsolved, like a sealed book waiting to be opened in the 19th century. Curiosity stirred anew. As settlers spread westward through the Mississippi Valley, scholars, surveyors, and explorers turned their eyes to the mysterious mounds. They carried sketchbooks, compasses, and oil lamps, recording by flickering light what they observed. For many, the sheer scale of these structures seemed astonishing, vast platforms and effigies rising from the soil, all built without iron, tools or beasts of burden. One of the most significant efforts came from the Smithsonian Institution in the 1840s. Teams of surveyors walked the valleys, carefully mapping circles, squares, and long embankments. Their notebooks, still preserved, show delicate pen strokes tracing outlines that had endured for over a millennium. These records stand as some of the earliest systematic studies of the mounds, yet this rediscovery was not without error. Many early scholars doubted that Native American ancestors could have created such works. Instead, they imagined lost civilizations, Egyptians, Atlanteans, or peoples from distant seas. These myths, though colorful, obscured the truth. Only later would archaeologists acknowledge what the mounds truly were, enduring testaments to the creativity and resilience of indigenous peoples. Still, the quiet presence of the mounds could not be overlooked. Farmers turned up pottery shards, stone blades, and bits of copper while working their fields. Children found arrowheads glinting in creek beds nearby. Each fragment carried whispers of a long buried story. Scholars gathered these pieces, arranging them in small cabinets or traveling displays, marveling at their craftsmanship even when they misunderstood their origins. Imagine an evening in 1850. Scholar sits at a wooden desk lit by an oil lamp. Before him lie pottery fragments, a carved effigy pipe, and notes from a recent journey to a mound. Outside, cicadas sing softly, while inside the pen scratches steadily across paper. He wonders who shaped these objects, why the mounds were raised, what ceremonies once filled the earthwork plazas. The full answers elude him, but asking the questions is already a step back toward memory. Excavations, too, began during this period. Some were careful, others more destructive. Curious hands dug into burial mounds, sometimes removing human remains and grave goods without ceremony. What was sacred became, for a time, a curiosity. This was a quieter form of harm, or not of malice, but of misunderstanding. Over time, practices improved, and today respect and preservation guide research. But in the 19th century, rediscovery was clumsy, as first steps often are. Historians still debate the impact of these early excavations. Some argue that they preserved valuable knowledge, recording sites that later vanished under plows or towns. Others note the loss of context and the disturbance of sacred places. Both are true. What remains is the image of men with shovels and lanterns, working in the night, their shadows cast long against the soil as they sought to uncover the past. Even amid this imperfect rediscovery, there was wonder. The size of the mounds impressed every observer. Monk's Mound, rising nearly 100 feet, stood as undeniable proof of human achievement. The serpent effigy in Ohio wound across the landscape in graceful curves. To see such things in the quiet of the countryside was to feel awe, a recognition that history ran deeper than many had assumed. The rediscovery also came with documentation. Maps were drawn, measurements recorded, and publications released. Readers in distant cities learned of these earthworks and marveled from afar. For the first time, the story of the mound builders entered broader awareness. Though often clouded by myth, the awareness itself was a seed planted, one that would grow into more accurate study in the centuries to follow. Imagine yourself in that century, walking with a scholar along a riverbank at dusk. He points toward a rise in the distance, a mound softened by grass. He takes out a notebook, carefully sketches its profile, and notes its direction in relation to the river. You stand together in silence, the light fading, the fireflies beginning their dance. In that moment, the mound is no longer invisible. It is recognized again. Rediscovery is often like this, small, quiet moments of recognition. What was overlooked becomes seen. What was ignored becomes studied. For the mounds, rediscovery meant that their story, once fading into the soil, returned to human awareness. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough to ensure they would not be entirely lost. By the late 19th century, preservation became a concern. Some sites were destroyed as towns grew or farmland expanded, but others were protected through early conservation efforts. Citizens and scholars alike began to argue that these earthworks should be valued as heritage, not obstacles. Slowly, the idea of preservation spread, though much was already gone, and so the 19th century stands as a turning point. The quiet centuries of forgetfulness gave way to renewed attention. By lamplight, in tents and cabins, scholars puzzled over the mounds. Farmers turned up artifacts with their plows. Children played atop hills that were, in truth, ancient structures. The mounds re-entered human story, not only as hills in a field, but as monuments of a forgotten past. Tonight, as you rest, you can imagine the calm of that rediscovery. A field at twilight, a scholar bending over his sketchbook, a lantern glowing warmly against the dusk. The mounds rise in the background, silent but newly noticed. It is a scene without drama, only the gentle unfolding of awareness. Rediscovery here is not triumph, but quiet respect, a step toward remembrance. The mounds had waited centuries for this. They had endured wind, rain, and the slow passage of time. To be rediscovered was to be seen again, to have their story whispered into the present. And as you drift further into calm, you feel the peace of that long patience. The mounds remind you that what is forgotten may yet return, that silence itself can be a guardian of memory, holding it until the time is right to be remembered once more. You walk in the present, where the mounds no longer stand as forgotten hills, but as gentle landmarks, carefully tended and honored. After centuries of neglect and misunderstanding, a shift occurred. People began to see these earthworks not as curiosities or obstacles, but as treasures, living bridges between the present and the ancient memory beneath our feet. Today they are parks, protected grounds, and even UNESCO heritage sites. Preservation, in truth, is an act of listening to the land, to history, and to the quiet voices that once filled these valleys. When you step into one of these sites, the first gift is silence. A soft breeze carries the songs of distant birds. Trails curve along grassy slopes, leading toward circles and platforms of earth. Small signs offer fragments of explanation, but the mounds themselves speak with greater clarity. Their presence alone stirs reflection, inviting you to pause, to breathe, to notice. Among the most treasured is Cahokia Mounds in Illinois, where Monk's Mound rises in calm majesty. From its summit, the horizon spreads in peaceful stillness. Once alive with tens of thousands, now it whispers with silence, teaching that time transforms noise into quiet wisdom. Preservation extends beyond Cahokia. In Ohio, the Great Serpent Mound winds gracefully across the land, a monument to both art and astronomy. Its curves remain visible after more than 1,000 years, maintained so that visitors can walk nearby and witness the form of a serpent that seems to rest upon the earth itself. Elsewhere, smaller sites are cared for with equal devotion. Hopewell earthworks, effigy mounds, burial sites. Together they create a constellation of memory, spread across the Mississippi Valley and high. Beyond Dot, the recognition of these places as UNESCO heritage sites brought a new level of protection. With this designation came the understanding that these are not merely regional treasures, but part of the world's collective history. The mounds are reminders that human creativity and community can take many forms, some of them softer and subtler than stone pyramids or towering cathedrals. Earth itself can be shaped into enduring symbols, and those symbols deserve care. Preservation today is guided by both science and reverence. Archaeologists now use ground-penetrating radar, aerial mapping, and gentle excavations that disturb as little as possible. Alongside them, tribal nations remind the world that these mounds are not only historical, but sacred. Together, they create a balance where knowledge is uncovered while dignity is preserved. What was once dug into carelessly is now approached with patience and quiet respect. For visitors, walking through preserved sites is often described as calming. These places are rarely crowded or noisy. Instead, they invite stillness. You may pause along a trail to listen to the breeze or stand quietly before a mound, wondering about the lives once gathered here. Preservation allows such moments to unfold. Without it, many of these earthworks might have disappeared under highways or houses. With it, they endure as gentle companions to the present. There is a quiet irony in their story. Built with immense communal effort, they later fell into neglect, only to be rediscovered and cherished centuries later. It is as though the earth itself safeguarded their memory, waiting until humanity was ready to see again with care instead of disregard. Some sites host ceremonies today, not recreations, but acts of living culture. Tribal members gather to honor ancestors, to sing, to pray. These moments remind us that the mounds are not just relics, but living heritage. They connect the past to the present in ways that go beyond history books. Standing nearby, you might hear a drumbeat carried on the wind. The rhythm seems to merge with the heartbeat of the earth itself, steady and reassuring. Preservation also inspires education. Children on school trips walk through these fields, teachers guiding them gently through stories of ancient communities. For some, it may be the first time they realize that history is not distant or abstract, but beneath their very feet. A child bends down, presses a hand into the grass, and feels the slope of a mound. In that simple gesture, memory passes into awareness. The story continues. Think for a moment about the effort required to preserve silence itself. In a busy modern world filled with traffic and screens, these places offer rare refuge. You stand in a field, the sky vast, the mounds rising softly, and you hear nothing but nature. This is not absence, but presence, a fullness that comes only with quiet. Preservation ensures that such silence survives, available to anyone willing to step into it. Historians still debate the full meanings of the mounds, but perhaps the greater gift is not certainty, but wonder. Preservation allows that wonder to remain open, a question alive rather than closed. You do not need every answer to feel the peace of standing before a 1,000-year-old earthwork. Sometimes the mystery is part of the comfort. As evening falls, in a preserved site, the atmosphere becomes almost dreamlike. The sun lowers, shadows lengthen across the grass, and the mounds seem to settle deeper into the earth. A gentle hush spreads, as if the land itself is exhaling. Visitors drift away, leaving the fields to the night. Stars appear overhead, just as they did for those who built the mounds. In that shared sky, past and present rest together. Silent. Preservation today is not only about protecting earthworks. It is about protecting a way of seeing, a way of slowing down and noticing. When you walk among the mounds, you join a lineage of wonder stretching back through centuries. You are not simply an observer of history, but part of its continuation. One more person pausing to listen. The mounds survive because people care. And people care because the mounds have a way of whispering to the heart. So as you rest tonight, imagine yourself strolling softly through a preserved mound field at dusk. The grass brushes your legs, the air is cool, and the light is fading to gold. You pause, take a breath, and feel the weight of centuries lift into calm. These earthworks, shaped by human hands long ago, stand now as guardians of memory and peace. They are preserved not to be studied alone, but to be felt. And in that feeling, you find serenity. Night comes slowly across the Mississippi Valley. The last warmth of daylight fades, leaving the fields brushed in silver. The mounds rest beneath the moon, their shapes softened by shadow, their quiet presence unchanged by centuries. You walk along a narrow trail, each step sinking lightly into the earth, the air cool and still. Fireflies flicker in the distance, drifting like sparks that have forgotten their flames. The world has grown calm, as if time itself has curled up to rest. The wind moves gently across the grass. It carries the faint scent of river water, the memory of forests, the quiet breath of earth that has been shaped by human hands long ago. You imagine the builders moving in slow procession, baskets of soil balanced on their shoulders. Their work ended centuries ago, yet their presence lingers, woven into every contour of the land. The mounds are more than shapes. They are reminders that effort and care can endure long after voices have faded. As you pause near a rise of earth, you notice how the moonlight outlines its curve. It looks less like a hill and more like a resting body, vast and serene. You think of the countless ceremonies once held here, of the stories told by firelight, of children playing at the edge of villages, their laughter drifting toward the sky. All of it is gone, yet all of it remains, folded gently into the soil beneath your feet. The past is not lost. It is simply resting. Far in the distance, the river holds the stars in its surface, a dark mirror broken only where the current whispers. Across hidden stones, it has flowed here for ages, shaping valleys, feeding fields, and guiding travelers long before there were maps or roads. The river was once the lifeline, a thread connecting scattered communities into something larger and shared. As you pause to listen, its voice drifts softly through the night air. In that steady rhythm, you feel the past and present folding together, your own heartbeat falling gently into time with its ancient, unbroken flow. The air grows cooler, and the night sky brightens with constellations. You tilt your head back and see Orion, the Pleiades, the familiar patterns that once guided builders and storytellers alike. Perhaps they stood where you stand now, gazing at the same stars, drawing meaning from their paths. Historians still debate the reasons for alignments and designs, but in this moment, you feel that the answer does not matter. What matters is the quiet wonder that stirs when you realize that time bends softly, connecting you to them. You continue, walking until you reach a wide clearing. Several mounds rise in a gentle circle, like silent guardians. You sit on the grass, your body sinking into the softness of the earth. A calm spreads through you, as if the ground itself is sharing its patience. Every worry feels lighter. Every thought drifts slower. Every breath becomes deeper. It is as if the mounds are teaching you without words, showing you how to rest without effort. An owl calls from somewhere close, its voice deep and steady as it drifts across the field. The sound folds into the rustling grass, the faint murmur of the river, and the silent shimmer of the stars. The night is not empty, but complete, carrying a chorus of quiet tones that soothe more gently than any song. You feel yourself blending into it, as if the boundaries between you and the world have softened. Your breath slows, your body eases, and your spirit leans naturally toward the stillness, carried deeper into the calm embrace of the sleeping earth. The ancient builders once dreamed, much like you dream tonight. Their hopes rested on the harvests that would feed their people, the journeys that would carry them across rivers, the families who gathered by firelight, and the mysteries written in the sky. Each dream sank quietly into the earth, layered into the mounds as seeds sink into soft soil. As you wander here, you walk gently among those hidden seeds, feeling them stir faintly under the touch of moonlight. They do not belong to you, yet they open to you, welcoming you as if the past itself leans close to whisper, "Rest here." You belong too. You close your eyes and imagine lying upon the grass. The earth is cool beneath you, steady and patient. Above, the sky stretches wide, endless and calm. Around you, the mounds rise with a slow rhythm, breathing like waves along a distant shore. In this rhythm, you drift between waking and sleep, carried as if in quiet arms. The earth cradles you, the stars drape you like a blanket, and the wind hums a soft lullaby. Time loosens its hold, stretching gentle and forgiving. And now, as the journey comes to an end, you allow yourself to sink fully into rest. The mounds remain behind, rising silently beneath the moon, holding stories that stretch across centuries. You no longer need to walk their fields or follow their rivers. You can simply let their quiet presence surround you like a soft cocoon. Of memory and peace, your breathing slows. Each exhale feels like the release of 1,000 small burdens. Each inhale feels like a gift of stillness. The world outside fades into silence, while the world within grows calm. Thoughts that once moved quickly now settle like leaves drifting onto water. You are safe here. You are held here. The builders shaped the earth with patience, and now the earth offers that same patience to you. Whatever worries you carried into this night, they can rest for now. Whatever questions remain unanswered, they can wait. The mounds remind you that endurance is not about rushing, but about being . So you close your eyes, knowing that sleep will arrive naturally, like nightfall across a quiet valley. Dreams will rise, gentle and unhurried, just as the mounds rose. long ago. You are part of that rhythm now, part of that long and peaceful story. Sleep well, my friend. May your night be soft, may your dreams be kind, and may you wake refreshed to a new day. Until next time, good night. End of script. Thank you for listening, everyone.